What up, guys? Joachim here, Joachim Justin Morgan, and in this video I'm going to cover the topic of the Sabbath as it is applied in Orthodox Christianity. I did a video on the First Ecumenical Council, or the First Council of Nicaea, and I got this response, which was super weird. So he says, "Tell the truth, they cast off the yoke of the Torah and changed the Sabbath day to Sunday." So in spite of what psychotic people may believe, the Sabbath had absolutely nothing to do with the First Ecumenical Council. The Sabbath has never been changed in any of the ecumenical councils, nor in the Orthodox Church until this very day. So I don't know where these people get this stuff from, but they're crazy people. That's the only thing. But it does provide a good opportunity. I will be reading from the Great and Holy Saturday, the Blessed Sabbath, which is obviously on Saturday. This is a service that we celebrate during Holy Week and Lent. Lent ends and then Holy Week begins. So we celebrate it during Holy Week as we lead up to the Pascha, the Pascha of the Lord. In English, Pascha has typically been called more commonly in the past century or so Easter. Easter is a Germanic word. It had to do with the month that Pascha was celebrated in. So they kind of referred in totality to the season as Easter, which is why in English, which is a Germanic language, we ended up getting Easter, whereas the rest of the world, I think unanimously, refers to it as Pascha. So if it's Latin, it's Pascha. If it's Greek, it's Pascha. If it's Russian, it's Pascha. If it's Spanish, it's Pascua. So a little bit different. But, for the most part, unless you are an English speaker, you would know the holiday as Pascha, and in English, most of it know it as either Pascha or as Easter. So it is not actually named after a pagan god, as they claim. It is actually a month, which the month may actually be named after a pagan god. I'm not sure. Our days in English are actually named after pagan gods. Like, I know Thursday is like Thor's day, like the pagan god Thor. Monday is like moon, so it's a lunar, the moon god. So, we have these days. Saturday is Saturn. It's named after the pagan god Saturn. So in Orthodox countries, though, or countries where the Orthodox Church has been prevalent for many centuries, they actually have this concept. So all of the days are usually called by the number of the day. So in Greek, the first day of the week is known as Kyriaki, or the Lord's Day. So it's actually, Sunday is called the Lord's Day, which is the day we meet for church. So just because we meet for church didn't make it the Sabbath, which is what I think these crazy people are getting at, but it does make it, however, the day that we meet. So we meet on the Lord's Day. We don't meet on the Sabbath, except for we meet during Vespers on the Sabbath as a transition from the Sabbath to the Lord's Day. And so, we do have that. That would be kind of a time every week when we meet on the Sabbath, because when we begin Vespers, it should be the Sabbath, and when it ends, it is the Lord's Day. It's at sundown, and it represents this transition period. So, technically speaking, I guess every week most of us meet on the Sabbath, but that's for Vespers, which is at night. That's not our Eucharistic service. We meet for the Eucharist in the morning on the Lord's Day. So in Greek, and I'm pretty sure in Russian and Romanian and all of the Orthodox languages, we have Sunday is called the Lord's Day, or Kyriaki, or some derivation of that, and depending on the language. In Greek, and the day before that is called Sabbato, or Saturday. It's called Sabbato, but in English we call it Saturday. And this is true throughout Orthodox countries. Then we have 4 days, which would be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and these are usually called day 1, day 2, day 3, and day 4. So pretty simple. In Greek, 2, or Monday, would be the second day, so it's 2. Δεύτερο, or δύο, would be 2, and δεύτερο would be the day. So you see, and then tria is 3 in Greek, and I can't remember how to say 3 as a day. It's not exactly the same. It's like tria, I don't remember. It's been a little while since I spoke Greek or read in Greek or did anything in Greek, but you kind of see the trend there. You have day one is actually the Lord's Day. So then day 2, 3, 4, and 5, Monday through Thursday, would be called after their number. And then Friday would be paraskefi, which is preparation. So it's a preparation for what? What are you preparing for on Friday if you don't have the Sabbath? Which, of course, we do have the Sabbath on Saturday. So traditionally, in many countries, I know in Romania and in Transylvania, because I was catechized by a priest from Transylvania in part. Actually, my primary catechism, well, it's pretty much shared. I had a long catechism for over a year with a Romanian priest from Transylvania, and then my normal catechism with the church was with an American priest. But I know that in Romania, they actually often took off work on Sabbath. So they would not work on the Sabbath, and then they would go to church on the Lord's Day, on Sunday, and then after church, they would resume work. So, that was Friday was a day of preparation so that they could be off on Saturday. And then Sunday after work, or after church, many people would resume work. So that has been a normative tradition, at least in Romania and in many Orthodox countries. In last century or so, many things with modernity and modernism have changed maybe people's practices, but not so much what they do. So the biggest part that I want all of you to see is the service of Holy Saturday, because I think it captures what is really at the heart of how Orthodox Christians view the Sabbath, or at least how we should view the Sabbath, in spite of what crazy people on the internet may say. So I responded with some of the information that I knew from my Romanian priest that kind of taught me the faith, at least for a while. And I said that the Orthodox Church has never changed the Sabbath. The Sabbath is still Saturday. We fast differently on the Sabbath and also on the Lord's Day. So if you notice, if you look at a calendar for fasting in the church, generally fasting periods will be relaxed on both Saturday and Sunday. Saturday because it's the Sabbath, and Sunday because it's the Lord's Day. These are days where we relax to some degree our fasting. That doesn't mean we stop fasting altogether on these days, but it is relaxed compared to whatever we are doing during the week. And then if it's a normal period where it's a non-fasting period, like it's not Great Lent in the church, then there's typically not fasting on Saturdays or Sundays for that matter. So we do not typically meet on the Sabbath except for Vespers, and I already mentioned this part, so I'm going to skip down a bit. For Orthodox Christians and the Ecumenical Councils, because that was what his claim was that the Ecumenical Councils changed the Sabbath. The Sabbath is held as a day of rest and remembrance, both of the Old Testament Sabbath and especially of the rest of Christ in the tomb, which is what I'll go over in the service of Holy Saturday. And this... Lost it. In this context, the Church also dedicates Saturdays to the commemoration of the departed and of various categories of saints, particularly the martyrs. We do not have any prohibitions against working on the Sabbath or the Lord's Day, so long as we don't neglect communion with the Church. So on the whole, you are making false statements. Okay, I won't go into too much in that, but I think what I said is true. The person poorly researched this and knew very little about what he was claiming, but then started making claims about the Orthodox Church. This is true both amongst crazy people and Catholics, which is why often I'm, a little bit critical of Catholics, because I see the things that they say about the Orthodox Church, and they often are making false claims for one reason or another. So then how should we as Orthodox Christians regard the Sabbath? As I mentioned, we don't have the rabbinical ideas, like we've never been under the rabbis. The rabbis, at least in the sense that they're known today in rabbinical Judaism, didn't exist at the time that the church developed. So we've never known the interpretations of the Talmud, which didn't come until long after Christ. So the Talmud was compiled in like the 3rd, 4th, 5th century. And, the church had already been around a very long time at that point. We had already had ecumenical councils by that point. So, we've never known these interpretations of the rabbis, which is what I think a lot of these crazy people are coming up with when they're discussing the Sabbath, and that we've changed the Sabbath. They are taking modern concepts and they're looking at modern groups that didn't come about until long after Christ and taking those things and superimposing them back into history. So how should we, as Orthodox Christians, regard the Sabbath? The Sabbath day is holy, and we remember it to keep it holy, which I've outlined several ways that we actually have that canonically built into our tradition already. But then this is the service of Holy Saturday. So on Holy Saturday, this actually begins on Friday evening, and then Saturday morning. This was the service. I think I took a screenshot of it from there. But it says that the great Moses mystically foreshadowed this day when he said, "God blessed the seventh day. This is the blessed Sabbath. This is the day of rest, on which the only begotten Son of God rested from all his works. By suffering death to fulfill the plan of salvation, he kept the Sabbath in the flesh. By returning again to what he was, he has granted us eternal life through his resurrection, for he alone is good, the lover of man." So this is drawing an analogy between Christ being in the tomb. Christ is laid in the tomb throughout Saturday. He has a rest. On Friday, he is crucified on Good Friday, the Periskophe that I mentioned before. Good Friday, Christ is prepared. There's also this concept of preparation, and he is crucified that day, and he is hung on a tree, and then he is taken down. And so Saturday then, or the Sabbath, commemorates this rest, this place where Christ has been laid in the tomb. So until usually at midnight, I think is the normal practice throughout the Orthodox Church. At midnight, on as the Sabbath transitions into the Lord's Day, we begin to celebrate the resurrection. So at midnight, many of us begin liturgy for the Sunday morning liturgy, and whereas normally we would begin liturgies at some time on Sunday morning, like 9:30, I think is when most churches meet, 9:30, 10 o'clock maybe at the latest. We begin service for the Sunday morning liturgy. Well, on Pascha, or Easter, if you're English, person, then we begin this service at midnight and on the transition between the Sabbath and the Lord's Day. So it usually begins at midnight, and then we celebrate the resurrection, and this is called Pascha. But for people that are very confused about the Sabbath, or they're just making false claims, these are how, like, we as Orthodox Christians, as the Ecumenical Councils lay out, this is how the Sabbath is understood. Now, there is an Ecumenical Council, and I did not prepare this, but there is an Ecumenical Council that states that the holiness of the Sabbath was transferred to the Lord's Day. And maybe I have some software things that I can look up real quick, since it's a question. Let me see if I can find that real quick, and maybe I can find the actual Ecumenical Council that says that. And I'm not sure it's an Ecumenical Council. I know there's a council that makes a statement like that. All right, let's see if I can locate this here. So there's never an ecumenical. It's not an ecumenical council. I know. Oh, here's something in the Council of Laodicea, Canon 29. It states that Christians must not Judaize by resting on the Sabbath, but must work on that day, rather honoring the Lord's Day, and if they can, resting then as Christians. So that actually discourages Sabbath observance, at least Sabbath observance in a Judaizing way. So maybe I'm wrong about that. I actually cannot find a canon that says that. So there are some other church fathers that write on this topic. Here's something I found in the Didache that mentions the Lord's Day and does not but it doesn't discuss a transfer of holiness from the Sabbath. Okay, so never mind. I'm not finding that at all. I don't remember where I read that at. Maybe I was in like a chat board and reading some crazy person making false claims, and I myself got confused. But anyways, always good to validate information. So yeah. Anyways, you guys take it easy, and I will talk to you in a video coming soon.